can sort of advise his students, both at the middle school level as well as at the high school level, how to negotiate themselves through this sort of, these times of uncertainty. So Bilal, do you want to sort of, introduce, add anything else to that small, short introduction?
I think I'll have you do most of my introductions for other videos too. I think you've covered everything and more, in fact. I think I just want to add that me and Fahim have been having a lot of discussions about just college readiness and how kids should be prepared for the world ahead before even this pandemic hit. So there are questions that I've had off of him about the admissions process, the trends, the immediate trends and the long-term trends that migration and college admissions in different countries and how they affect it. Because I was very interested in this area. For the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't had much data to work with, so I wanted to get some questions answered by him. A lot of my students are college bound, 18-year-old students, so I wanted to get some of the advice across to them also. So we thought might as well record some of the session because then we can keep it for others to also maybe take some benefit out of this. So the idea just being that having a conversation and getting some more, you know, if you would just start off by just giving a general idea of what's happened the last few years and more specifically what is happening this year with the students applying.
Okay, I think what will be useful, Bilal, is to start with some context of the global landscape for college admissions,
Sure. Is this
and
pre-pandemic or post? Both.
I mean, this is as it is right now. I mean, so it covers a little bit of the pre-pandemic as well as the current situation,
Please.
and some sense of, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but some sense of I would like to say some informed sense of how the market is going to evolve going forward
Sure.
post-pandemic as well. Um, so there are roughly about 5.6 million to about 6 million students whom we would consider to be internationally mobile students, in the
Okay.
world today. And these are students who are at the undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD levels, including people who do short-term study as well. So exchange programs, that kind of thing as well. So that figure is around 5.6 to 6 million. And before I, sort of break that figure down a little bit, um, these are fairly reliable figures. I mean, they come from the Institute of International Education, the World Bank, OECD, UNESCO, because these are the kind of global organizations that have the capacity to
Collect this
to
data.
collect this data and to check its veracity and all of that sort of stuff.
What's
Uh,
the general increase, by the way, on a year-on-year level?
so
Increase on this number.
So generally, it's been over the last 5 to 6 years. It's been a fairly steady increase. So I would say between 2 to 3%. Is kind of the figures that are happening, because one of the things that these figures don't capture is how the markets for how the domestic higher education industry is performing. Because, for example, if we take Pakistan, for instance, I mean, just a couple of years ago, we didn't have Habib
Yes,
University. Now it's
that's true.
there. There's turned out, I think, two batches or the
I
second
believe
batch.
so. I think
Yeah.
yeah,
So and fantastic kids, by the way.
I know, and a great program also.
Excellent
I
program. I swear by their core liberal program. The core liberal program that I did at my college in upstate New York, I mean, that was fantastic. But I've looked at the core liberal program here. I've talked to students about it. We have a couple of graduates from Habib at Cedar. So, where I
I'll
were.
come back to this liberal program also
Yeah,
later.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have some
absolutely,
questions about that.
absolutely. So of the 5.6 to 6 million, the in absolute numbers, the bulk are in the US, right? Because it is the main sort of citadel of
Higher
education,
education.
has been for many years, and then
But this has changed lately. The last 5, 6 years or 10 years, I think. No, sorry, 20 years. China has come up quite a bit.
China has also come up, but I'll just get to China.
Okay,
But
sorry.
although in absolute numbers the US is the
That's the highest.
topmost, it has 1 million students, But in terms of international students as a percentage of total students, at the undergraduate, postgraduate level, it only has about 5 to 6%
Oh, okay.
of that internationally mobile population, right? And the country that has the highest percentage of international students as
Students.
a percentage of its total
Yeah.
student body is actually Australia.
Okay.
You know,
It was
and
starting to boom the last when I was going to college. My friends were thinking about going to Australia. Now it's very popular, and New Zealand too. You were saying.
Australia, New Zealand to a lesser extent because it's a small country,
Mhm.
doesn't have as many
Universities.
universities. But Australia and Canada are sort of up there, right? So it's the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and we all know that Canada and Australia are particularly attractive markets because a lot of foreign students want to consider immigration options.
Yes.
So those are two countries that have fairly liberal options.
Especially if you graduate from there.
Yeah, so I mean, the moment you get there, I mean, the clock starts ticking and you start accumulating points and that kind of stuff.
So you still recommend if anybody is looking to move, these would be good options to think about.
Absolutely, and I mean, Australia doesn't have all that sort of marketing and social media budgeting and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff, the bells and whistles that the Americans do, but it has fantastic educational standards. I mean, some of the best in the world. A lot of research that I follow on 21st century educational practices.
That's
I've
right.
told you, right? Like
We do.
Patrick Griffins and
Absolutely,
those
absolutely.
guys.
Melbourne, University of Melbourne, Sydney.
Exactly, exactly. So they are the leaders in that kind of current stuff.
I have an anecdotal information about also anecdote about Australian education. Uh, as one of the schools I started with was CAS, and I picked up one of the books they had in the library. It was the Australian State or National Board's science book, chemistry.
Yeah,
It was by far the best written book I've ever seen on science, and this was 10th grade, 11th grade level. So
absolutely.
they're investing a lot of money. Yes, they aren't marketing. They don't want the world to know too much about what they're doing.
I don't know about that, but I think but I think they just don't have the dollars,
They don't.
right? Yeah, they don't have the dollars. So, but you're right. About Australian education. I mean, two of my high school teachers. One who taught me economics and other who taught me anthropology. Actually, one of them was Australian. The one who taught me anthropology was a guy from New Zealand,
Oh,
and and they wrote textbooks for IB which are currently in use. So the economics guy unfortunately passed away 3 years ago, John Hughes. But I mean, there's just no. I mean, it's a fantastic, excellent education. So a lot of people from our part of the world find it a little, okay, it's a little remote, and but if it's education that matters to you, it's Australian education second to none. And I'm not on their payroll or anything like that, so I'm not advocating for that. Obviously, there is the so one of the considerations in this whole game, because it's an industry, right? And
absolutely.
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and
It's increasing by the mass. The increase in the tuition fee is quite rapid over the last 20, 30 years,
yeah, it has
especially in
been.
the US and the UK.
Yeah, but with the US, you have that option with private colleges where it gets discounted because you can get financial aid. And
Yeah,
of course, that's a big question about financial aid in the
in
current
the current
environment,
climate.
right?
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. But so so I think that there are other options also available to students which are now coming up in this. Oh, sorry. Before I go take that particular
Yeah.
road, I had lost my train of thought, so I
No
just
worries.
recalled it. I was going to say that even before the COVID thing, this whole issue about the value for money
Yes.
had been has been a great preoccupation. It has been of a lot of concern, not just for international students, but for domestic students as well, because they're not able to afford it.
Yeah.
So, in the U.S. also for healthcare, for example. I mean, we're just talking about
Absolutely.
education. It's beyond the means of the average middle class or lower middle class American
And I
citizen,
think
right?
they pick up a lot of debt also. I mean, people take on debt for education for about 20 years there.
Yeah,
So there's
absolutely.
already a conversation about justifying the cost. I think that's also why Canada and Australia are better value for money. I think the dollar is weaker compared to the American dollar. So
Correct,
you would
correct.
probably match that also.
Correct, and I think that apart from these sort of historical, what would you call them, citadels of education, because the English-speaking countries have had a long history of developing the university networks. Um, there are other gems evolving now as well, and there are other regions that are becoming more attractive, and
For English speaking students.
for English speaking students,
Okay.
so the students, so those geographies are, places like the Netherlands, for example, and you were mentioning China. China is like it currently has about 2% of the market, for international students,
Okay.
but they have the money. I mean, their economy has been growing, substantially. So, and they're investing a lot in R&D as well. So,
And they're
so
also hiring a lot of professors in university, high school professors, headmasters, setting up private colleges or private schools also,
absolutely,
partner sister programs from US and the UK also in China.
absolutely. So China's a market for people. Then in the Middle East,
The first time I've actually heard Pakistanis go to China was actually the Wuhan pandemic when we found out that there were Pakistani students studying in Wuhan who
yeah,
had been quarantined. So
yeah.
there is already a movement from Pakistanis going to China.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you know, Pakistani have had a long history with China anyway.
Absolutely.
So a lot of technical education, especially in the engineering side of things, a lot of students would go to China because the Pak Chin Dosti, and the Pakistani government also provides funding, the Qarz Hasna scheme and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So that's been happening. Now, obviously, it does not carry the sort of perceived premium that the other geographies do, but again, when you pit that against the value for money issue, people wonder. I mean, okay, is it really worth the whole, drama of going to an Ivy League? Not that everybody gets into an Ivy League,
Absolutely.
you know.
But then there are also the students or parents who look for some take foreign degree education as more of a signaling tool. Like, hey, I went to a good university, so it's going to get me better economic opportunities. While some go actually for the experience. So obviously, for both kinds of clientele, you would say, or students, the experiences or even the places they look at would be different, right? Because if there are people are still going for brand names, then you still have to, stick to some major names in the old markets. You would say the US and the UK and Canada.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that the COVID is doing, and I don't think people are doing it consciously, but it's happening, is that there is a sort of an existential revisiting of this assumption that, you know, well, agar main, if I graduate from Harvard, the big assumption being that you'll get into Harvard,
Yes.
uh, that if I, go to Harvard or some of the top
Yeah.
notch names, or both in the US as well as in Canada and all these places, कि यार वहाँ से मैं निकलूंगा तो मेरा एक established network होएगा और सब कुछ होएगा, and
Yeah.
but when you compare notes with the industry, they'll tell you that actually that's not really accurate. We're still short on skills.
For many areas.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the research also on a lot of these well-known names, huh? um, not just research that's sort of published and people don't really have access to, but they're actually translated into books.
Okay.
So you'll find that the kind of grade inflation that happens at a number of the Ivy Leagues, for example, is scary. So getting in may be difficult, you know, but once you're there, I mean, then it's kind of you wonder what level of depth have they acquired. So to give you an example, I mean, if somebody put across an Harvard undergraduate or any of the Ivy League undergraduate compared to, say, let's say somebody from Amherst or Williams or Swarthmore or
The
the
liberal arts
Pomor,
colleges
the liberal arts colleges, and these are still, the Amherst and all that are
are still
pretty
pretty.
pretty difficult names to get into. But
Absolutely.
even if you go a notch below, let's say, the College of Worcester, okay,
Yeah.
or Eckerd College, or
Lafayette or something.
Lafayette, Lehigh,
Hmm.
these kinds of schools. I mean, are you going to tell me that the economics major at Lehigh knows any less economics than the guy at Harvard? I don't think so.
I don't think so
You
either.
know, and
Yeah.
the other issue is when you go to the workplace, what they're looking for is problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking. The whole shebang that
Yeah,
that
the
that
four
I'm trying
C's
to.
and the R's and
Bilkul, bilkul.
absolutely.
So I mean, where is all that? I mean, it doesn't exist at the middle to high school level. So you'd think that certain colleges will develop that when you go there. It's
Sure.
implicitly there,
Yeah.
but it's not explicitly there. And then
Yes.
the whole attitude. I mean, I'd rather have a workhorse,
Then
whom I'm going to train anyway. I mean, you can have like two MBAs from wherever, but the way my organization does work, I need to sort of align you to that way.
sure.
So and so I think that whole value proposition is changing, and people are going to be more sort of practical about things as well, right? Obviously, coronavirus has affected people's cash flows, their incomes.
Absolutely.
So many people are unemployed.
And also, you can't even get the experience. Some universities are still working on online. I think most in the US are still online.
Yeah, I mean, like many of them are online. Some have done a fantastic job. Some have struggled. Some are folding. Some have drawn upon their endowments. I mean, like there's some universities who've drawn up to $200 million. And not everybody has that kind of money.
Absolutely.
So what is the impact going to be? I mean, professors who were on tenure are, I mean, new tenureship is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that gets you the rankings is
Is tenure
that kind of,
professors.
although ranking is a whole, what I think about
It's a
the
yeah, it's a
the ranking game, right? I mean, that's the last thing that students really should look at.
but that's the first thing they look at.
But that's the first and often the only thing they look at.
Absolutely, the
Which
US
is
News
ridiculous.
ranking. And there are also only one ranking, the
Yeah,
US News ranking. That's the
yeah.
only one that exists in
So,
most cases.
that's why everybody talks about fit and all that. So,
Yeah.
but that requires more homework,
Yes.
and it should be done. It can be done, and you'll find that there'll be people going. They'll get into their dream school, but they'll find, oh my God, this university is actually so huge, but I fit better into a smaller school,
Or vice
or
versa.
vice versa.
Absolutely.
Or I mean, there's some schools where you need binoculars to actually see the professors in the
Yeah.
first year. I mean, like hundreds, 200, 300 students sitting in a class, ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know,
You can talk to the
and
professor.
why would you want to pay $75,000 for that?
Yes.
So that kind of thing.
That's the question a lot of parents are asking nowadays.
Absolutely. So so these are the cost considerations is one thing, and then there is obviously that consideration about the xenophobia that we hear about,
So
and
yeah.
not just an American thing, but also in England and elsewhere, and that kind of thing. So that's also making people question, you know okay, is it worth it for that reason also? Although you and I know, and others, many parents also know, that once you're in that campus environment, you're
There's
kind of inoculated from that.
from the world. Yeah.
But
Most campuses are liberal. Even if they're in conservative states in America, for example,
yeah,
generally the student body is more liberal and they're accepting. And
absolutely. So I mean, when I sort of begin to when I initiate a relationship, or a relationship for counseling is initiated with me, I mean, kids may have a very good idea about क्या मैंने तो economics पढ़नी है, मैंने anthropology, ये जो भी करना है,
yeah.
I have them challenge that assumption for sure, including the parents, because a lot of it is parent driven as well,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
कि ये करोगे तो आगे तुम्हारा future बन जाएगा. I mean, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with that,
Yeah.
but you can also have a future in things that are only involving, for example, artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not about doing math and economics. It's about actually doing economics and statistics, or economics and data science. So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So challenge those assumptions, and figure out,
Where do you
and
fit well?
where do you fit well,
Also, you can also experiment these days with some of the online courses to see where
the
which.
MOOCs and all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the other point that I wanted to sort of establish.
Yeah.
Okay, again, this is not about, okay, I have this sort of insight into what's going to happen 20 years from now. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but one can see that the one of the things that's happened during the COVID, the kind of confidence it's given to people, actually it's given a certain level of confidence
To the
to
customers, to the people
to
to
the to
try.
the to the suppliers as well, to the universities. KR, we always had these budgets and stuff like that, and we always used the online environment as a contingency of sorts.
Yeah.
So now they've tested it, and tested it with their own professors, their level of familiarity with it as well, right? So they've crossed a certain psychological barrier there. KR, it can work, but it's not going to be a haphazard thing. Like even right now at certain middle schools here and high schools
Yeah.
here, we've got a bunch of technologies going, so it's very, very stressful, but it is doable,
It
right?
is doable.
So one of the things that is doing is it's emboldening certain universities and colleges, not just in America but everywhere else as well, including Pakistan. Okay, how can we in terms of both the value for money issue, and the fact that the technology is there, how can we use that to create different types of learning experiences,
Yeah,
you know
because I think people just don't consider online course. I mean, because before this time, we had online courses, distance learning courses. You got the Open University in the UK, University of London programs, Phoenix University, and a few Arizona State had started their online programs,
Absolutely.
but they were only online. So those kids would be part of those majors
Yeah.
would only be online. Now, I think what I've seen is that because everybody's now studying online, they know it's not impossible to do. At the
Correct.
same time, when you said that different learning environments, so are there any universities that are trying to? I mean, what do you think? Are they going to offer a mixed alternative where some courses could be online and some will be in person, or some parts of the course be online and some in person? Because what's happening is that you only currently have two options.
Right.
You either go on campus, residential college, stay there,
Yeah.
and take classes at the college, or study at home.
So these kinds of hybrid and high flex options are evolving, right?
Okay.
And the other thing that's evolving is one of the things that when Northeastern University in Massachusetts
Massachusetts, yeah.
started this, the co-op option. People are saying, "Ye kya pagal bana?" What that co-op option is that you do your regular undergraduate, but while you're doing that, you have the option to go and work for 6 months or 3 months or whatever, or you can structure a particular learning experience in such a way that you get credit for it. So there is value that way as well. So people are going to look at more sort of innovative and creative ways to structure that 4 year thing. It doesn't have to be 4 years,
Yeah.
you know.
But
Uh,
but obviously there's certain state regulations in other countries
Correct.
to quantify that number of years for undergraduate.
Correct. And those are all up for discussion now. I mean,
Absolutely, because
for
two.
example, अभी जब US में ये सारा हुआ था, so they said, yeah, we can't issue you I-20s for pure online learning, right? I mean, why do you need I-20s for online
Online learning.
learning, right? So
So then the Pakistanis are wondering, or others are wondering, then why do I even have to pay that? If I
exactly.
can't even get the I-20 to live in the university for the experience, then why even pay the university then?
And absolutely, and then bringing back the technology part in it, which gives you scale, economies of scale. So if that's happening, then why should my online degree cost? Why should the tuition for that be $50,000? Yeah,
Yeah. So we
you
have a
know.
question from an online. I'm just
Yeah,
asking
sure,
this
sure, sure.
because
Go on.
we'll keep on doing this. But what do you think is the future of the SAT exams or
The
ACT?
SAT is even before the COVID thing, so many colleges and universities had made it or test optional, right? So and there have been so many studies done on the SATs, value as a predictor of success. So there is conflicting data there.
Mhm.
So I find that more and more schools are doing away with it, and I think that's just going to get catalyzed even more. So, but that doesn't mean that there will be no standardized testing
They'll
or
find some other way.
absolutely they'll find more authentic assessments as we call them. So people with for example, I mean, my argument on the global perspectives and research course, for
Absolutely.
example, right? So if you're able to provide those kinds of an academic research paper, which is what you do in college, right? or which
Yeah.
is what you should be doing in college,
Yeah.
reading and writing. So if you provide those kinds of authentic instruments, authentic examples of your ability to create knowledge in order to solve a problem,
Yeah.
you know, then I think that's a much more valuable piece of demonstrated
Evidence.
evidence
Yeah.
than SATs or anything else.
So
You know.
this year, especially, this is more pertinent this year's SATs because this year even cumulative exams were not exams. So the kids going to college right now have actually just have predicted grades.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of questions that I have more specific, and then we can talk about more detail again.
But because we're on this, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but because we're on this, I wanted to clarify that something that whenever I see kids, I mean, especially kids, who are grade class for us class 9 onwards,
Hmm.
the clock starts ticking, and that's my time to tell them that look, be consistent, you know because you need to establish consistency is something that every school will look at, whether you look at Zavist or Stanford. So consistency in whatever it is that not just academics. So be consistent in showing those, because and now sort of I feel a little vindicated, but because kids have had to provide evidence,
Yeah.
schools have had to provide
Provide
evidence.
evidence.
तो वो कहाँ से आते हैं? वो आपके टेस्ट, quizzes, homework assignments,
Yeah.
attendance in class, simple things like that. Because that's the attitudinal part of an applicant's ability that they also look at.
Yeah.
you know so sorry, you were going to say,
Yeah, I actually lost my chain of thought.
oh, sorry
I was
about
just
that.
listening to you. No, that's okay. But yes, I was thinking. So SAT. So
No.
this year, especially where the kids have. So how are they? How, in your opinion, how the university is going to be actually gauging, or how have they gauged the students' ability, given that grades were already predicted, and then not a lot of kids, maybe for the US, took the SAT exam.
Yeah, because
So
many,
the previous results is what they used.
they're using the previous results, they're using that whole trajectory, right, from grade 9 onwards.
There's a big problem I see. I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
the question I was asking. A lot of students who got admitted this year, especially in the US, and because it's an option for many universities to defer your admissions for the next year. So a
Yeah,
lot of students who graduated A levels in 2020 have deferred their admission for 1 year,
yeah.
more so than ever before. So obviously universities in America would have a prediction and trend, but this year they've seen that. So that right now their probably student bodies are smaller this year than it would ever be in any year.
That's possible, absolutely, yeah.
And
And
so next year, these students who were
kind of make
deferred are going to.
exactly, I see where you're going with this. that
So,
that
so
that
basically, the
the
second years
ones.
currently.
Yeah, so the second year is what you're saying is that because the people who are meant to go this year in the fall,
Yeah.
they've deferred. Many of them have, and they're going to go next year. But the capacity of the universities is still going to be limited,
Yeah.
so that the ones applying this year will face even more competition. Absolutely, not just for places, but also for scholarships and financial aid, right?
Absolutely. That's
So
what, especially scholarship and financial aid, because the
absolutely,
universities could probably say
yeah.
that we had, for example, fewer kids for the class of 2024, so we can take more kids for the class of 2025. We have space, and maybe they can, for 1 year have a larger class,
Right.
but the financial aid budget is still the same, and
Yeah,
more
and
kids are.
so a gap
So what do
year.
those kids do?
Okay, so a gap year is not just there because of the COVID thing,
Yeah, I
or
agree.
shouldn't be, you know. I
I
mean,
agree. That's another conversation I want to have.
yeah,
The
yeah,
benefits of gap years. I think that, but that's a different conversation. But
yeah.
just currently, what would you advise those kids that are looking to apply this next year, this year, who are applying right now?
I would tell them that because there is nobody has a crystal ball there,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, where there is I mean, you take the good with the bad kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I would assume that it's kind of business as usual as far as the application process is concerned, except that
More
many
more
universities.
competition.
No, no, except that okay, even the schools that required the SATs have relaxed that requirement, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So assume and put in your 100% into the application process, and then wait and see. When you hear from universities, okay, what is my situation at that point? So and then evaluate. Don't assume that you won't get in.
Okay.
So I mean, that would be a terrible thing to do. you know
But just the things that this, you come up, like for example, another question that I might have is that, uh, so if a lot of students currently are thinking that what's the point of paying so much money to go study abroad, like especially when we can't even study abroad, they're not like giving visas in the US or other
Correct,
places,
correct,
so
right.
might as well take up admission at places like Lums and Habib.
Yeah.
Now I would assume that a lot of students are doing that
Yeah, I mean a bunch of that, and that would
more than ever before.
so obviously that's going to also increase the competition at these schools.
Absolutely, they have limited size and limited
Abs-
capacity.
absolutely. So because they're also not, they're not going to be able to respond to that fast enough to accommodate that many people, you know, and it's a tough thing for them because maybe a year and a half down the line, those particular students who would have said, "Yeah, I want to go to Lance or IB or Habib or whatever else, Qaeda Azam, Joby, you know, that after a year I'll transfer out to my US university or my Canadian one, the one
Yeah.
that I really wanted to go to." So, all those kinds of factors coming in. But at the same time, what's happening is that, I mean, Turkey is looking attractive to a lot of
A lot of
students,
students, yes.
because, you're not just going there for the academics, you're going there for much more than
Experience.
that, much more than that, you know.
How do you rate
Um,
their programs? Because I know they've given a lot of admissions to a lot of private schools there, but a lot of them are just 5 to 10 years old, and I'm all for the new because I want
yeah,
universities to come up
yeah,
new. So how do you
yeah.
rate in your experience their programs?
Well, I mean, as far as Sabanchi is concerned, I think they're up there. Obviously, they don't have variety in the programs or as much depth in the programs as do other comparable. I mean, as do other international universities. So, वो नहीं है. But the quality of the kids, attitudinally, fantastic. Yeah, you know. I mean, the same thing I would say with Habib University graduates as well.
All right.
Leave aside Sabanchi.
So, like, if you were to advise students, let's say student says, you know what, I would love to go study abroad. I have a certain amount of money, my parents do, and I'm open to suggesting. What would you suggest in the order of hierarchy? Which places should they
Really,
consider, given the current
I know
standards?
what you mean, but it's
Because
very
some
difficult to
places are
generalize.
but they're also close. I meant was I understand that it might be difficult for normal scenarios, but given that every country has reacted differently to this pandemic, to this lockdown, so which higher education industries or which countries may it seems like they are more open to still international, like the US. If it's not giving I-20s, I would not even think about going there. It's not giving the visa to go.
Well, at the moment they're not, right? I mean,
Okay.
it's not like yeah. I mean, then there is that issue of the elections as well, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but I think that even after, let's say Trump doesn't get elected, right? I mean, there is still has been a certain backlash that will continue. You can't just shove it under the carpet.
Exactly.
So that concern will be there. I mean, I'm not a political analyst or anything like that,
Yeah.
but that concern will be there. But at the same time, I mean, these international students, and I'm not just talking about Pakistani. Pakistanis are a small number of people who actually represent that
International student.
5.6 million figure, right? The
Those
bulk are the
Chinese.
Chinese, the Indians, the Koreans, the Vietnamese, the Saudi Arabians, all of that. Those are the top 4 or 5 senders,
To these big regions.
Absolutely. So, and they obviously spark a whole supply chain there, right, which
Yeah.
runs into billions of dollars.
That's
So,
true. So now
so
let's say these kids are still unsure about where they want to go. So let's talk about gap years right now. So let's say
okay.
a kid decides,
But
okay, no,
sorry.
it's okay.
I didn't finish up on that earlier part of your question. Ke, how do you advise somebody where to apply?
Where to apply? Yeah.
I can't generalize that. It depends on everybody's specific situation. So it's not
Okay.
like if the U.S. like my kids are U.S. citizens. So I mean that's one logical place for them to
Absolutely.
apply, regardless of what's happening out there.
Yeah, because
You
they're
know,
US citizens, that makes it
yeah.
easier. But
So,
I'm saying, let's say a Pakistani citizen whose parents can afford about $20,000 a year,
hmm.
about that much money. A Pakistani citizen who can afford that wants to,
if
some form of sciences or liberal arts, not specifically medicine or engineering.
if it's something that can't be done here, okay, then apply outside in current times.
In current times,
You know.
you recommend everybody stick around here for a year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Or
Meaning either take a gap year here and do something which we'll just talk about,
yeah, I
or
mean,
apply.
yeah, a gap year doesn't mean you don't do anything, right? Obviously, so you can have a very structured gap year, And I think that, our kids, uh, especially in the sort of upper echelon of the private schools, don't have the EQ. Okay, that doesn't mean that they go there and they sink, but they could have a stronger EQ, and they could be much better informed if they were to take a year off, regardless of COVID and all this.
So this is also general advice that I generally would love to give to most students. Like
Yeah,
I generally when I say, and I recommend to all. This is by the way pre-COVID, post-COVID, because I don't think these students when they're growing up, they rush through the ages of seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, and exams and exams and exams, and they haven't really paused and taken a stock of themselves, what they
yeah.
want, what triggers them, what will they learn, what they
Yeah,
want to
this
do.
is why I argue about the four C's and metacognition and reflective thinking and reflective writing.
Yes,
I
too
mean, not
important.
I mean, there's like a whole bunch of it's a big movement,
But I'll
right?
be honest
Global.
with you, you're the only one who speaks about it here. I'll
So,
be honest.
to,
I
to,
haven't heard many people talk about it, but I do see the benefit. So continue, sir.
so I think kids can stay back. We were talking about earlier in a different context. We spoke about alternative credentials, right?
Yes,
What are alternative credentials? I mean, what are they? I mean, a credential is a credential, right? Something that recognizes your whatever
a degree is
qualify.
one, right? And A levels is a credential,
A
degree is
level is a
one.
credential. Good.
You got these BTech credentials from EdXL and so on.
Correct,
But
correct.
there are also others that you were mentioning.
Exactly. So there's a whole credentialing movement, which basically says that 4 years of a BA, or in many cases it's actually 6 years of a BA, because not everybody graduates on time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I come from that school of thought कि यार वो 4 साल है उसके अंदर करना है, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But many kids don't graduate within that time.
Four and a
So
half, so easily. 4.5,
yeah.
5.
So there are alternative ways and alternative providers, alternatives to universities. I mean, Udemy, edX, all these MOOC providers as well,
Yeah.
and proper entities that are affiliated with universities.
I mean, you can also do like at one time. I remember growing up, Microsoft was an alternative credential provider.
Yeah.
Microsoft had the ND certification and
Yeah,
this
Google
Google
yeah.
now just started a $400 program.
Yeah,
So that's very fascinating. This shift last month they announced
Yeah.
the program.
Yeah. So I would say if there is a student out there, for example, who's interested in all this, gamification and stuff like that, gaming, creating a game, creating applications and stuff like that, all this can be done online, and you can actually get a proper accredited certification for that. If that's what you're going to do at the end of 4 years anyway,
Might as
so
well
so
start
do
now.
this, or certainly do it in your gap year, you
Alright.
know, and develop a certain program that of goals and outcomes that you want to see achieved, and then work to that.
I've also seen these some some individuals that have actually started their own programs. Individuals I found like Seth Godin he does 4 or 5 courses a year from starting from an all-time BA course to the writing workshop to critical thinking workshop. Then another person Tom Billiou about mental well-being and entrepreneurship, and they're just putting up they have their own online version of how to create that content, and they're also now getting badgings from the open
Digital
badge,
badge, yeah,
digital
exactly,
badges, so
yeah.
that is a movement. I think the last 3 years I've seen a massive growth in this industry. So
Yeah.
I think by the time these kids who actually graduate, I think we'll see a lot more acceptance of these alternate credentials.
Actually, 100%. I mean, and like it has to happen that way. I mean, that is one of the key advantages of technology, as
Yeah.
also, right? So, we were talking about the gap year aspect, and
Yeah.
so what are some of the students who've deferred admissions, including their financial aid packages? Some of them have, which is not always a dumb thing, because most universities will defer admissions easily,
But not
but not financial aid. So if you're able to get your admissions, your financial aid package deferred as well, nothing like it. But anyhow, so the point is that like there's a friend who runs a fintech company. He's running an internship program for A-level students. So kids can get involved in that. I mean, fintech is
as modern as current as it can get.
exactly, yeah.
Absolutely, it's the
So
hottest thing right now.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. So, similarly, I've just forwarded two CVs of my students to different schools where they can work as tutors in their respective subjects.
That's great.
That kind of thing. So I mean, this is just like one or two things here,
Yeah.
but there are gazillion things that students can do based on their interest. You know, so there are many options there.
In your experience, have the number of students who take gap years as that increase in Pakistan? I know abroad it has. In the US, a lot of kids take gap year now. I think universities prefer they do.
No, many universities would. There's nothing wrong with it, but in Pakistan we still don't have that sort of, culture where we say, "Okay, yaar, let's have a break in between, and then do it." Usually, it's because something drastically wrong has
Happened
happened.
in Pakistan. That's
You
what
know,
people think. Yeah.
"Okay, yaar, wo continuity नहीं रही," you know.
But that's something that we should get over and realize that pause. I think that's what one thing that's taught a lot of people this time.
I mean, imagine the pressure. Yeah, you do your O levels, which is like, I mean, it starts happening at class 10, right? You write off Pakistan studies, Islamiyat, Urdu, whatever
Yeah.
it is, and then 11, tremendous pressure, and then when you get into A levels, you go in with the same mindset of the O level thing, and
Yeah.
you realize a year later, yeah, actually, it's a different ball game.
It is.
So, but examination after examination after examination, and with very limited options as well. It's only now recently that
But
we have.
this examinations are very more of a British education system issue. I remember having spent some time in U.S. high schools, middle school. There was a lot more that we learn on campus
Yeah.
than academic subjects, right?
Yeah.
Carpentry and programming. So I mean, those are some hard skills you'd call them. But I
Yeah.
know you've talked a lot about other skills kids need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of universities, especially in the US and Canada, are looking for other skill sets in addition to just grades from traditional subjects. So what are some of the skills that kids can learn along with studying for A levels right now?
Like for example, like my daughter, I mean, she did a course online at Oxford, okay, and she kept telling me, "Baba, I'm really interested in geography and geology." No, yeah, I mean, you shared some interest in it, but it wasn't like a deep intellectual interest, is what I sensed. But I said, I mean, I have to give her the opportunity to figure it out.
Yeah.
One of the things she did was in this particular course was do learn how to use the software to create maps.
Okay.
Okay, and then when she got into that process, she realized, she got an excellent experience of a very demanding
Of
course,
course.
so, and which required her to be consistently working. B, she realized that this is so scientific, and I'm actually not really interested in the science part of it. So
Geology is very scientific.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
as a result, it wasn't a waste. What she realized was that I had the wrong reasons to be interested in geography,
Geology.
geology. But as a result of it, she developed a possible area of interest, which is anthropology.
Okay.
You
I
know,
can see the overlap.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So if you
But
don't,
those are still academic areas. I was also thinking about, in addition to academic and other academic areas that we don't in Pakistan study. Anthropology is one of them and all that. But there is also other skills that you highlight. Some we call them 21st century skills.
right, like, oh,
Some
okay, I see what you
and
mean. Yeah,
future skills also. Like some actual bankable skills that don't need a 4 year degree for a student to learn. And there's nothing wrong with learning more.
research.
GPR.
No, I mean,
Absolutely.
number one thing, research. I mean, if you're going to be in the information age,
That's
and
the most
and the knowledge
practical
industry,
skill.
yeah, absolutely. And what separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls here is the extent to which you can create knowledge, new knowledge, in order to solve specific problems.
That's very
Because
true.
obviously, whatever the quantum of knowledge that exists is not able it's not just knowledge that you're using. You're using other skills to be able to solve problems. So if you don't know how to research, I mean, I think it doesn't matter whether you had a 4.0 in and you were a magna cum laude or a summa cum laude. तो उसका फायदा क्या है? you know So I mean, research skills are there,
Yeah.
environmental literacy is there, financial literacy is there, entrepreneurial literacy is there, all these kinds of things, you know. So, and we have so many companies now that do social entrepreneur. Another friend of mine, Faraz, does social seed ventures.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you know
yes.
Faraz, no?
Yes,
Very
yes.
enterprising guy. In fact, he's on a live webinar right now himself. Yeah,
Fascinating.
you know, I mean, those kinds of opportunities are there,
Yeah.
you know. So
And so I mean, how do we get our kids to be more? I mean, I don't see. I'm always there, and there are days that I talk to my students also and others to get them excited about these courses. But it's just
incentivize, yeah, incentivize. What incentive is there at school to do philosophical math? Zero.
that's
We spent so much time doing procedural knowledge कि यार वो quadratic equation आपको एक दे दिया और उसको आप जब तक उसके वो पूरा board maths and though I mean I'm the last person to talk about math, not very good at it, but you know, so it has to be incentivized in the curriculum, right?
yeah. Well, that's one incentive. So see, so obviously, yeah, creating the incentive through curriculum is one, exams is one. But I was wondering, does have some universities highlighted some of these programs or skills they would really measure them on? Because given that you said earlier that they are definitely working on other ways of credentialing students other than SAT. So I'm assuming, I'm wondering and thinking, have they figured out some way to test some of these 21st century skills or some
Okay,
other
so
skills?
so, so this assessment of 21st century skills
Yeah.
is sort of the a lot of research is being done in it. You know, is it there 100% yet? No,
So how do
but
the kids have to still prove if they
exactly.
can prove it
No, no,
somehow?
but it does. I mean, you have to be creative. Ironically, I mean, you have to be creative about creating those assessments as well, right?
Okay.
So I mean, I had a big debate once with a friend of mine, senior person, runs a very successful company out of Singapore, and so I was like, you know, Mr. X, Y, and Z, you know, I'm going to push for these, you know. So he said, how are you going to assess kids? You know, it's not empirically validated. ये वो time है. So I said, you know, well, what about what is being currently assessed? Where show me the studies, the research-based studies that shows that the way the CIE and the IB and the American school system actually evaluates is the right way to evaluate. You know, what gives that those assessments
So,
credibility?
but aren't these platforms given the credibility by the universities who are accepting their assessments? Are they
Well,
have they are they moving in
but that's not. I mean, just because you know they say that we'll accept these
yeah,
doesn't mean that you know
I
they're
agree.
credible.
Absolutely.
Okay,
But
so
I was asking because the funny thing is I'm wearing a hat as an educator and also trying to learn more about that. At the same time, thinking from the point of view of a student right now who's applying, and the kids applying right now, I think a few things that they'll want to love to know is right now is that the application process started. This is the application season, right? October, November, December, early admissions in the US and Oxford, Cambridge is already they've already set out the forms for that, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then by December they'll start have finished the application. So in the next 2 3 months, in addition to the application process,
क्या करना
and
चाहिए?
what else can they learn?
Yeah,
What
I
do
think you know. I mean, they can. Right now. I mean, if you're talking about the seniors,
seniors and also even the people who are juniors,
yeah, right,
the
right.
ones who have
So
like
the
this year,
juniors and the ones below that as well. You know, maybe the O level crowd is too busy doing their O level stuff, but you know,
for your first year, second year A levels,
yeah.
second year.
I mean, these are people who need to do more research about what it is that interests them. You know, challenge the assumptions. If you say, you know, मैंने तो, I mean, like I was talking to a student of mine whom I taught at Lyceum as well, but I'm also advising her,
Yeah.
and I want to do finance and accounting. Why do you want to do finance and accounting? You know, because you know, sir, absolutely no clear reason. You want to do
Except for
finance.
the because it's a popular major for
It's
me.
a popular major. I want to do finance because eventually I want to make money. So, you know, you'll make money doing other things as well.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is it's a great time to reflect for any and everybody, you know. And part
The
of the
problem is that most kids don't want to spend that time reflecting. Generally speaking, they when I look for and ask the kids, okay, this is the process by which you can discover yourself.
yeah,
But again, it's like where's the
I'll tell
counselor
you,
who do this for me?
yeah,
They want even wants a counselor to reflect for them and give them the path. You know, that's the funny thing.
No, but there is nothing stopping, well, you or your other partners from saying that from tomorrow onwards or from next year onwards, 20% of my internal assessments will be based on reflective writing. You know,
Actually, I was just talking to a
not
student of mine, by the way.
yeah,
My own student from, she was mentioning how reflective writing, forcing her students to do that once a week, has created long lasting relationships with them.
yeah,
Just that itself,
yeah.
just knowing the
I mean,
individual.
that is what we talk about social and emotional well-being. I mean, that is a great way to, there. I mean, there is therapy in
Therapy.
therapy. There is writing therapy. There is dance therapy. All that sort of stuff comes into play. And it's not just for students that they should do this reflective thinking and writing.
Yeah.
Teachers, yeah, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So that kind. I mean, but net, if you want me to sort of wrap things up and say, okay, what should students be doing? Part of it is business as usual. you know don't make unchallenged assumptions and either withdraw from the process of applying,
Okay.
and do nothing, or actually go and say, "Okay, everything is hunky-dory." I mean, challenge the assumptions, and force yourself to become clearer about what exactly is it that you want to do, and on what terms do you want to do it, and then figure out, okay, and forget about rankings and prestige and this and that in your. I mean, so figure those things out and use the help of somebody, either an independent educational consultant or your own school counselors. I mean, in your schools, you have some excellent school counselors.
Or yourselves. I remember when
Yeah,
I was in KGS,
yeah,
I didn't take much help from the counselors.
yeah,
I just literally used the US News book,
yeah,
not the rankings.
yeah.
I actually would open random universities and see what they would offer, what makes them. So a lot of kids these days don't understand that each university has their own character. You have to
Correct.
go learn,
Yeah,
understand what that is. Do you fit there also?
yeah.
So my question, one more question I want to ask for sure is that, so the kids who applied right now, and if they get in, they should just continue college. They should not think about, like taking a gap year if they're already not
No,
taking a
no. I
gap
mean,
year.
if they're already not taking a gap year, let's say in March, April, when the results for the
Okay.
US and Canada become clearer, and then later for England, will be, depending on what their results are, because those are all usually conditional offers, right?
Yes.
So आप उस time पे evaluate करें. Yeah, what is the situation? I mean, in some cases, the decision will be made for you because you won't get a visa,
That's another
right?
problem. That's another
So,
problem.
but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply now,
Yeah.
because you'll miss the boat, right? Let's say you can get the visa and things do improve, then where are you? You don't want to be sort of left stranded, right? So, but reconsider the options that you automatically discarded simply because they don't come up in QS rankings or Times rankings and stuff like that. Those really don't mean anything. I mean, I don't know a single LUMS graduate, literally don't know a single LUMS graduate who has not gone on to do a fantastic postgraduate degree from brand names and otherwise.
And that's also, by the way,
You
I
know,
know everybody I know
you
who's
know,
my class fellow
yeah.
who went to LUMS has done wonders.
I mean, I did 18 years in the banking industry, and I met so many people from IBA, for example, incredibly smart people,
Oh yes,
and
yes.
went on and did
Bigger and better things.
the bigger and better things, and they're global heads in different industries and organizations.
This was a
So,
fun conversation. It's been an
uh,
hour already, by the way.
oh, no, no, no,
and
thanks a
and
lot.
there's a lot of questions that are still, by the way.
So they can inbox me. I mean, I know we kind of move more towards more generalistic kind of stuff,
Yes.
but
But we don't mind having another conversation. I actually wanted to also maybe put in some pointers out there that I think they should. I'm sure with this webinar, we'll share your email address. They reach out to you,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right, and
absolutely,
ask
yeah,
specific questions. Maybe you
yeah,
can collect the questions next time. You can answer them directly.
yeah,
It could be admissions about China. I mean, I'm sure I have some questions
yeah,
about Netherlands,
yeah,
New
yeah.
Zealand,
Bilkul,
Australia.
bilkul,
I
bilkul.
think some of the maybe we could spend some time discussing the processes of these places because most people don't know.
Actually, also the sources, Bilal. So many people don't know the sources. Where should I go? Because there's so many search engines. There's so many different places.
And also these independent consultants who are on the payroll for some of these universities,
Those are
right?
the agent and brokers.
The agent and brokers, and
Yeah,
then differentiating them from independent consultants who are looking out for your benefit versus the university's benefit.
Yeah. And then, independent educational consultants like myself,
Yeah.
frankly, I mean, I pride myself on the fact that, I actually did a counseling degree.
I know
You know,
you have a lot of
I'm a
credentials.
member of relevant clubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So to
Can I
me,
tap
that
that membership
matters.
sometime?
Huh?
Can I tap that membership?
Of course, of course, of course,
I'd
of
like to
course.
read some more on that.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, I mean, knowing where to search and how to search is very important.
I agree. I
So
agree. I think I've learned more just by doing that than ever in any formal education I've had. Just
yeah,
the learning how to search, finding the right thing, not just looking for it, but research also involves summarizing it,
yeah.
formalizing it.
I mean, don't just go and type the best schools for this because you'll get a million hits. And what are you going to go through a million hits? I don't think so.
But on
You
its
know,
own, search research skills will be important. What you
absolutely.
teach
Yeah.
at GPR also.
Yeah.
That's something that we'd love to talk about again.
Yeah. So I mean, folks should send their whatever questions they have
Yeah.
between myself and my two other folks who helped me. You
Great.
know,
Great.
we could
This
respond.
was a great
So
conversation.
Billy,
Loved
thank
it.
you so much for
Loved
your
it. Loved
time.
it.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
So,
All right, guys.
all right,
I'm
take care.
out.
Thank you.